All right, in this video, we're going to talk about more TLC theory. Go figure, because that's what this lecture is all about. Whoa, surprise, surprise. All right, but more importantly, I'm going to focus on this concept of documentation. How can we visualize these things? How can we see them? How can we document them? And what kind of calculations can we do? Like, what is there that's going to help us out with this entire process? So the very first thing that I want to talk about, I think, is the concept that once I take a plate out, then there's nothing on it. Oh no, separation didn't happen. What am I going to do? Well, maybe nothing. Maybe that's actually what should have happened. Not every single time do I develop a plate and actually see spots. That is not how this process works, nor was it the intention of how this process works. Now, there are times, absolutely, cha-ching, I can see the spots as they develop. That is not a major problem at all. If I've got things that I can see with my own eyeballs that show up in a visible type of spectrum way, then absolutely I can see these separate. I can see it happen right in front of me. There is no major big deal at all. So, for instance, if I've got something colored green, like chlorophyll, and I place that chlorophyll sample on a TLC plate and I allow this to develop, then I'm going to see separation maybe that's going to take place here, and I can start seeing separation of different colors or different pigmentations. If I've got a plant extract, absolutely I can do this all over again. So you can do that on TLC. No one says that you can't, but it's not very common that the things that I want to see will actually show up on the plate as it's getting developed. So there's got to be a way that we can see these spots after the fact. So if I do see the spots, I want to immediately, as soon as possible, circle them or ID them. All right, so if I see a spot that shows up and I visually can see it happen and it is there, I'm going to take a pen, I'm going to take a pencil, and I'm going to circle the spots that I see. And I'm going to do that before I allow the plate to sit in a lab drawer, before I allow the plate to go into, some type of waiting room of endless lobby doctor's offices. So I'm waiting until the next time that I come back to pick up, whether it's my next shift or whether it's the next lab period. I don't want to take the chance of those spots fading. And some of them do. So that is why very often it is drastically important to circle those areas as soon as you see them develop onto the plate, if you can visually see them. All right. Now, the idea here, I just threw my pen. Hold on. I just threw my pen across the room. That's how excited I get when I talk about TLC. All right, so the idea here, though, is that not all the spots, and many of them actually, I cannot see with my own eyeballs. So how do we actually see the spots? And I need some type of indicator. And the indicator is going to allow me to, use a little bit of magician tricks to see spots that are on the plate that I can't necessarily see with my own eyeballs. So some of these will actually respond very well to a UV 254. And that 254 needs a little bit of help. So what goes on here is that we need to see these spots that show up on a plate. Some of these compounds, depending on their organic structures, respond very well to 254, but I've got to make sure that I can at least produce some type of background, so that way I can easily see this much better. And that UV 254 indicator, well, we've already talked about this in a way, because we have already mentioned that plates very often will have a 254 indicator on them, and that F is for like fluorescent. So the concept here is that I've got things onto a plate. They are a certain organic chemical structure. They will absorb UV light, but I want to make sure that I can actually see it like really well. So what we do is that we smear the entire plate with silica, and that entire plate with silica is going to have this indicator built in. And this indicator very often will glow, and it will glow a very bright green color. So that way, if I get a spot or a component of a sample that is on this plate, that is going to absorb the UV light energy that I'm getting ready to shine on it. And because it absorbs it, it becomes a void. It becomes a dark spot or a dark area. That's great. That's what I want. I want to be able to see that. I want to be able to know where that spot is located. So that way I can then take a pencil and maybe outline that area myself. Or if I'm taking an image of it on a computer software, then I can at least see that image on the computer screen, and that will allow me again to make measurements and to calculate RF values and so forth. But if that bright green was not there, those spots would be a little more difficult to see. And I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to take the gamble. And that is why we incorporate this indicator into the silica, or whatever version of silica that we're using, whether it's modified or not, in the slurry of the stationary phase. And that is why we're smearing it all the way across the plate. It allows those dark voids to show up a little bit better and a little bit more obvious. So the 254 is often just really a zinc silicate. That is what we refer to as this indicator. They mix this zinc fluorescent salt into the stationary phase. They apply this zinc mix with our silica over the surface of the plate, and they allow the binder and stuff to take place. That way it's on that glass. It's ready to go whenever we need it. Absolutely. Again, that zinc is going to glow a bright green when we apply the 254 nanometer wavelength onto the surface of the plate. It glows in the dark. Think about boom, 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 being in the club, right? So if you're in the club and you're wearing these glow in the dark types of things, you could go under black light and then all of a sudden you begin to glow. Well, the same thing's happening here. All of a sudden it's went to the club and now that shirt is beginning to glow, or underwear, or whatever you decide to wear off that you want to show off for the night. All right, so these components are going to be seen as dark spots, and those dark spots is what I'm going to circle. Those dark spots are what we're going to measure. A lot of people are very surprised that a zinc compound can actually do that, and here it is. Absolutely, this is kind of what goes on. So up here at the very top, you are seeing an image. I'm going to say number 1 is up here. You're seeing an image of just how this kind of zinc mineral compound looks like in real life under daylight with your own eyeballs, and then we put it under UV light, and then ta-da! All of a sudden we get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle glow. So this is what's kind of happening. It's what goes on, and we're like, hey, this is a UV responder. So we can take this thing and we can grind it up, and we can mix it in with the silica, and then we can smear it all over the surface of the plate. And then before you know it, then all of a sudden we get all of these glow in the dark types of nuclear looking things that I need to stay away from. Well, actually it's pretty safe. That is just responding to UV light energy. It's the world of spectroscopy here, folks, right on a pedestal. So if you've taken the spectroscopy course already, hello, you already know about UV. You already know about maximum wavelengths. You already know that different compounds respond to different things in different wavelengths in different ways. So this is how this zinc mineral is basically going to behave under that image. So if you do want to capture these images and you want these glow in the dark types of things, and you want to save those, there's a few ways to do them. You can use scanners. Scanners, I think, are going to be the most cha-ching, 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 the most expensive way that we can do that. You can also use cameras, and cameras is just a cha-ching, cha-ching. So you can take a picture of it. You know, very often, like years and years and years ago, we used to use Polaroid cameras. So the Polaroid camera with the Polaroid film, you take a picture of it, allow that picture to develop, and you've got it. So it doesn't really take a lot of extras in order to go down that rabbit hole, but you can be as creative as you want to be. And then you can even use cell phones. And then for cell phones, guess what I'm going to do? Ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. That's the most expensive way to take a picture. Because I know you, and you're probably out buying the thousands of dollars of cell phones every little year from Apple or whoever else that you decide to buy from. And if so, boo, I'm so sorry that you've made those life choices. But either way, you can take a cell phone. That cell phone can take a picture of them, absolutely. And then you can convert that picture into an image that you can then attach to a document or print off or go up and upload into some type of report. So different ways, different options. Again, anything as basic as a camera or a cell phone, that's really a camera nowadays, is built into the system, and that's exactly what they do. Images can be stored in software, so depending on what you are using for the plate, you can just take a picture and it's just a picture. Or you can take a picture and have that sent to a software program that's attached to a computer, of course. And that software is going to store these images. It's going to help you organize the images. And you can go back and you can access the images at any point in time. Print them off, send them in an email, upload them as an image into a document. Whatever you want, you can be as fancy as you want here. And with the KMAG instrumentation, it does utilize the software that is there on the machine that is operating each individual component of the HPTLC system. So, again, the idea here is, am I using automated instrumentation to do it for me? Or am I doing it by hand? If I'm doing it by hand, then I'm probably using cell phones, I'm probably using cameras, and then I am uploading those images or doing something with them myself. But if I'm using instrumentation to allow me to kind of process sample development, then that's great. It probably is running off of software already, and that software will store and keep the images for me. The piece that does the visualizing with the KMAG system is the KMAG visualizer. And that's kind of what they call it. There's different versions of it, but this is kind of like a bread box in a way. You just open up, this door slides up, whoop, and there it goes. And then up underneath this, there is a UV light box. And that UV light box is going to turn on. You can do white light, you can do ultraviolet. You've got a few options here depending on the visualizer that you have. So the plate is going to go on the inside, and then you whoop, close the door back down. And then you allow this visualizer to do its job, and that's to visualize, go figure, the plate. And then whatever image that it takes, it shows up on your computer screen. You've got a little bit of options on what to do with that image. You can white balance it. You can change kind of the hue. You can change how deep or how dark these spots are going to show up. So you've got different options to play around with them. It's like, almost like Photoshop in a way, in order to get an image that shows up very clear. So the visualizer, that's its purpose. Most of the time, the visualizer is going to be done first, and that is taking a picture of a clean plate. And then number two, at the very end, when we take a picture of the developed plate. So that way we can compare the two images with each other. We can sure show that it is clean because we did an image in the very beginning of the process and no spots were there. And then at the end of our development, we can show spots were there, and that proves that components are present, components were separated, components are now on the plate, and they were not there before. So we know it's coming from the sample that we've applied. Well, if you don't have something like a fancy KMAG instrument, you can have different versions and variations of these systems that are out there. This is a UVP chroma docket, which is just really kind of the same thing. It's just not connected to a computer. It's not connected to software. It's just really, again, a bread box. I mean, that's kind of how I'm explaining these things. And those bread boxes are going to be closed, so that way you can get a really good image. And then look at this. Up on top, you see like an old school actual camera. So this is a camera that has been placed on top with just a bracket. You look down through the camera view, you take a picture of it, there it is, and then you can transfer that picture from the camera to a computer software in some form or in some fashion. You do have different versions of these documentation systems. You can get a digital, this should be a color camera, or you can do monochrome depending on how much money you want to spend. You can save them in JPEGs, of course. You can use a series of filters that help kind of take off some of the background noise to allow you to see the bands maybe a little bit better. So I'm going to put filters on this list as well. and you can add those as needed to clean up whatever you need to see or whatever wavelength that you need to adjust yourself with. You can just stick with a 254 UV light box. That is the most common that's out there. That's what we see most of the time. Or you can be a little fancy and you can begin to change those wavelengths. You don't have to stay at 254. You can dance around in the ultraviolet, maybe wavelength areas. Because if you're going in the visible areas, you can probably see this with your eyeballs. But 250, 200 to 400 nanometers, maybe that's something that you want to do. Maybe you want that option. And if so, there's systems and models out there that can do that for you. But this is a $4,800 bread box, folks. That's what this is. So it includes the light box, the surrounding encasement, the view field that you can see in the front that lets your eyeballs see what you're seeing. And then, of course, the big fancy camera. Nowadays, though, our cell phones probably have more capability and can take better pictures than those camera systems that you see on top there. Whenever you use UV light bulbs, keep in mind, folks, you want to make sure that you use them carefully. UV light does have a lot of energy. It's got a lot of burning power that's associated here. So if your skin comes in contact, or if your eyeballs that are not protected comes in contact with the UV light box, it will burn you. It is very similar to a tanning bed light. So you do get burnt. It will get irritated. It will go, ouch, 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 I'm a lobster. And that happens with me in less than 5 minutes. Even when I use these UV light boxes, if I'm not really protecting my hands and my arms, my forearms and my hands are going to get sunburned due to the amount of energy that these UV lights are giving off. So you got to be really careful. You can get burned. Do not look directly at the light boxes. They have covers on them for a reason. So look at the docket system. You're seeing everything is enclosed, so that way your eyeballs cannot see it or become exposed to the UV light energy. Look at the visualizer. The whole thing is basically encased. It is surrounded by a box. You cannot see it. There is a little viewfinder. That viewfinder is right there underneath that gray piece. So that just whoop, plops up. And then that will allow you to kind of see on the inside, but it is protected. So that would be like your tanning bed safety goggles or your safety glasses that you should be wearing if you are laying in a tanning bed. But that's kind of what this kind of process is all about. So in the next video, we're going to continue, like after the development, what happens. Not everything is 254 appropriate. So what goes on in those types of situations, we need to talk about those options. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So come back and see me. We're still going to be talking about imaging these plates and what my options are on the table when I begin this process of development and my calculations about what is there and what is not.